What is that about? What is the border obsession about? The border, to me, is about order. You're in a place that is experiencing what to you, in a subjective sense, and based on the statistics that we have available, decline. A decrease in the standard of living, social unraveling, disorder. And the border, a border wall, represents the antidote, right? The antidote to disorder is order. The antidote to unruliness, to invasion, is barrier, precision, protection. And there's something about that that appeals to the deepest part of our shared socio-political and cultural DNA as a people. The first diary entry that the captain of the ship that settles Jamestown makes is, he says, first entry, "As soon as we came to shore, we were set upon by the savages." The experience of the settlements were an experience of conquest. They were an experience of ethnic cleansing, but in a first-person sense, they were an experience of constant terror, right? What lay out past the clearing? What lay out in the woods? And it's the same experience of the frontier, an experience of conquest, of ethnic cleansing, but also an experience by those doing the conquering of fear. What lays out past the frontier? What lays out past the border? Will they come and take it back? The experience of the slave patriarch resting his head on his pillow in his plantation in the Low Country in South Carolina. He is in control, and yet every day he reads posts in the local paper that circulated to the slavers of slave rebellions, cautioning him not to take too light a hand, cautioning him that his only backstop, if they come for him, is the gun and the force of violence. Now, in all of these cases, our moral object of concern isn't with the delicate sensibilities of the slaver, right? Of the settler. Our moral concern is with the people who are on the wrong side of the whip, and the wrong side of the gun, and the wrong side of the disease. But as a descriptive matter, it is a through line of the American project to conquer and subdue territory not your own, to bring into your sense of order a disordered land, and to be animated at every moment that it may fall back into disorder, that it may be taken back, that you've painted a target on your back, that you who have brought it to order are in the crosshairs. Lynch mobs, the expression of the ultimate in white supremacist terrorism, the tool by which Reconstruction was destroyed. Years of social progress erased for decades. The lynch mob. The lynch mob says they're scared, right? That they're enforcing the social order, that they are not lawless terrorists, but instead are enforcing the law, that they are protecting themselves. In 1968, Richard Nixon comes to stand at the podium. Wow, we got a hiss there. In 1968, Richard Nixon comes to stand at the podium in Miami Beach for the Republican National Convention to give his convention speech. And the context for that speech in 1968 is a country that is racked with disorder. There are protests, there are riots. There have been two of the most wrenching assassinations in the nation's history between MLK and RFK. Our cities are burning, he says, and tonight it is time for a frank discussion about the problem of order in this country. This speech would sort of come to be known as the law and order speech. And I'd always sort of thought about law and order as being about the law. One nation under law, equal justice under law, the law and all it represents in a liberal democracy. But in doing the research for this book, in watching that Richard Nixon speech, it becomes very clear that what he's really talking about is the order part of it. Society had grown disorderly, the social order had come unraveled, and that order had to be reasserted. In fact, if you tolerated disorder, if you tolerated chaos, you would lead to criminality. It's around this time that something remarkable happens in American history, which has never happened before or since, which is the largest uptick in crime in the nation's history. Right? Now, this crime wave is very real. It's not some social construction. It's not the paranoid, feverish imagination of people who are the shared inheritors of our cultural heritage, who are maybe disposed to be fearful. Homicides, general violent crimes go up about 400% between 1966 and 1979. By 1991, there are 2,300 homicides in the city of New York. Last year, there were about 350. It is at this time that a new kind of politics develops that draws on old kind of politics. It's at this time that law and order politics make themselves felt from every race from dog catcher up to President of the United States. And that fear, that white fear, one of the most powerful forces in politics, a force that if you cultivate, you are enriching political uranium for a nuclear weapon. It is brought to bear. And the arguments are so seductive. This lawlessness, this crime you fear in a city that after the civil rights movement is starting to integrate rapidly, we can protect you from it. We could punish the evildoers and the thugs and the criminals who threaten to overrun. It's at this same moment that much of the civil rights struggle for desegregation particularly comes to northern cities, where often they are beaten back, the infamous Boston busing riots, for instance. Fights over affordable housing, and at every thrust and parry of every municipal dispute between a homeowners association or a school district or a city council district about where this housing is going to be placed and who's going to be in this school district, borders are being drawn. Now, this fear that this produces is not to me some sort of alien thing, because I felt it myself. I was 12 years old in 1991, and I lived in the Bronx, and I just started going down to Manhattan every day to go to a public magnet school that took kids from all 5 boroughs. And this school was on one of these borders, right? On one side, in the neighborhood that I went to school on 94th Street in Madison, was the Upper East Side, which is affluent and white. On the other side of the border was East Harlem, which is poor and black and brown. And at this time, which was New York City in the crack years and at its peak violence, we got jacked all the time. It was just a sort of routine. I remember going to a dance one night. I was walking with these girls who I was trying to impress, and this kid came up and he's like, "Run your bus pass." And I was like, "What?" He's like, "I said, give me your fucking wallet." And I want to be like, "Actually, that's not what you said." He said, "Run your bus pass." But I reached into my wallet and he knocked it down on the ground, and I was maybe gonna try to take it back, and he whistled, and this group of kids came up and they looked at me, and I just gave them my bus pass and they went off. And I felt angry, and I felt humiliated, and I felt emasculated, and that was just one time. Now, nothing ever bad happened to me. I didn't really get roughed up in any way. I never faced any lethal threats or anything. But it was a condition of walking through the city to have that in the back of your head. I was talking to some friends when I was going through final drafts of this book, and I was rereading the portions of the book that were about this time in my life and thinking I was being a little overly dramatic. And I was in a park with these friends of mine who I'm still friends with today, who also went to that school, and there's actually someone in this audience who was there with me. Not there, but at the school. And I was like, am I imagining that? They're like, no, dude. Like, we would have, when we were 12, like the cool thing at the time, and this will hit like a certain age group exactly right. Only 90s kids will understand. Like we all had, JanSports were the cool backpack, right? Yes. Nice, yeah. Y'all remember that? Yeah. Did you guys do the thing here on the West Coast where you like collected those the little strings? That's like the one dude that went to high school with me is clapping. Everyone's like, I don't know what you're talking about. But not only did you wear a JanSport, like you wore a JanSport low on your back, like, but super low so it wasn't comfortable. Because that was cool. And so when you walked, it just like hit your butt like this. But the thing about wearing your JanSport that low is that you couldn't really run with it. So what would happen is like you'd be walking around and you kind of like looking around, gauging what's going on in the city and like who's over there and who's over there and who's over there. And maybe like out of the corner of your eye, you would sense some threat. And then you'd like grab the straps and go, shoop. Just get that backpack right riding up here so you could book. You know, that fear was there the whole time. And it wasn't just me, obviously. The city felt it. And when Rudy Giuliani ran for mayor in this context, what he was promising New Yorkers, and particularly white New Yorkers, was order. He was saying to my white liberal mom, like, I'm your kid, I'm going to keep them, the ones that might jack your son's hat, I'm going to keep them where they need to be. I'm going to restore order back to this city. It was the same argument that Richard Nixon had made in 1968. It's the same argument the president has made about the border, right? And it was an argument that drew on this article in 1982 by these two individuals, Kelling and Wilson, called Broken Windows. And what Broken Windows is about the ways that disorder lead to crime. The theory of broken windows is that if you're in a neighborhood that has broken windows, one broken window or two broken windows, soon you'll have 3 broken windows and 4 broken windows, and before you know it, chaos will ensue. And that approach to policing was adopted by William Bratton, who at the time was the head of the police department for the New York City subway system, which was kind of famously, in a sense, a site of disorder and disrepair. Like, do people remember the images of the New York City subway system from that time? The city was an icon of disorder, particularly in my youth. Like in the Bronx. There were all these abandoned buildings in the Bronx, and at some point Mayor Koch decided like the way they were going to deal with that was going to put like window decals in the windows that had like a flower box and like Venetian blinds. But they didn't like vary up the decals enough. So it looked like this like completely Soviet project where every single window had the same colorful image of Potemkin happiness. So Nixon in that speech, he has a line in the speech where he's sort of trying for some kind of faux equanimity. And he says at some point, black citizens want the same as white citizens. They don't want to be just the subjects of state aid. They don't want to be a colony in a nation. And that term really just stuck with me, that phrase, a colony in a nation. Because when I was reporting in Ferguson, and when I was reporting the west side of Baltimore, and when I reported in New York and in Chicago, there were so many people that I talked to who were experiencing the police as an occupying force. There were people who were experiencing the police, a form of humiliation in the face of the police, that is a form of humiliation that does a crucial and fundamental violence to our shared democratic principles. There was a kid in a parking lot in Ferguson who showed me a video. And it was a video of folks in Ferguson who were in the front yard of their own house drinking from red Solo cups. You guys know what those are, right? Yeah. Okay, good. You'd be super out of touch if you didn't. And they're drinking from red Solo cups, and in the background, you can see the blurry lights of a police cruiser. And behind that police cruiser, it's at night, or in front of the police cruiser, you can see a phalanx of cops in a V formation. And they're hard to make out, but the folks who are in the smartphone sort of shaky frame start to get agitated, and someone starts narrating into the phone. They're coming toward us, they're marching, and they're coming towards us. And as he holds out the phone, you can see that there's this wedge formation of cops. And they're wearing the riot gear that looks like it was designed by like a Marvel comic book artist. You know that riot gear? Bulges here and bulges there. And they have their batons, and they're sort of walking laconically, very slowly down the street. And the police bullhorn is telling these people who are in the front yard to get off the front yard and go in the house. And folks in this front yard start getting agitated, and the person who owns the house is like, this is our yard, this is my house, this is my property. And a bunch of people start saying, hands up, don't shoot, which was the rallying cry in the wake of Mike Brown's death in Ferguson. This is 2 nights after Michael Brown was shot and killed. Police keep coming. Bullhorn tells them to go back in the house. Crowd gets a little more agitated, and then boom, tear gas canister fired into the yard. The camera frame goes shaky as the person holding it hits the ground. Bedlam ensues. People are screaming. The person whose yard it is furious. His friends have to restrain him as he's yelling, "This is my house. This is our property." They finally calm him down, and the person who had been narrating looks in the phone and says, "Why do you think we say fuck the police? This shit." The politics of order have brought us a nation that is divided into 2 regimes of criminal justice. Those regimes interlock like a latticework in inner city neighborhoods and in long stretches through counties. Those 2 regimes represent different spheres of citizenship. In the nation, the police sort of function like your laptop's operating system. It's working in the background. You do what you do. The ideal amount of interactions you want to have with the police is 0, right? We agree on that, right? I mean, you don't want to be the victim of crime. You don't want anyone you love or know to be a victim of crime. You don't want to be suspected of a crime. You don't want anyone you love or know to be suspected of a crime. You want to have basically nothing to do with the police ever. In the colony, law enforcement functions like a computer virus. It disrupts. It intrudes constantly. The disruption itself is normal. The disruption itself has to be planned about. And in the colony, the experience of citizenship is an experience of humiliation that we would associate with an unfree nation. The point of this book is for us collectively, and when I say us, I'm going to be specific here, white people. Okay, white people? This political system was not built by some special interests, and it was not negotiated in a backroom deal. It's not like the bankruptcy bill or small bits of deregulation the coal industry is able to convince the president to sign. This was a democratic project. It was a democratic project that was formed through the call and response of white fear over a period of 20 to 30 years that has produced a nation in which 1 out of every 4 prisoners in the world is an American. Think about that. I mean, you can go right now to an arraignment court in this city or any city in America, and you can just watch the conveyor belt roll through. It's like Lucy with the chocolates. And that system lies in fundamental conflict with the things that we say we believe as a democratic people. And so the project of this book, I'm going to take questions in just a second. You guys with me still? Okay, good. The project of this book is, if we made this democratically, we can unmake it democratically. Right? And the project of this book is to tell all of you that are sitting here tonight, and everyone that's read the book, that we own it as citizens. What's so seductive about the idea that powers it all is that we can build some wall and be okay where we are. I mean, I'm seduced by it. I live in New York City now. Crime is down. I own a home. I got 2 kids. I don't want to be bothered. I don't want disorder. I don't want graffiti back on the subway. Right? There's some part of us, there's some part of me that thinks if real equality were to come, I'd have to pay some price. That it is zero-sum. That if we did let the disorder creep back in, then I'd be paying that mental tax I used to pay when I was 12 years old walking around my JanSport. I don't want to pay that. But there's another part of me. It's the part of me that I cling to, particularly in these times, that thinks that a world and a nation in which we flourish together is possible. That the system we've created offers us the promise of safety and security, but it brings us repression. And it hurts us as a people, as a collective entity. It lights on an unbelievably massive bonfire the talents and dreams of aspirations of millions of our fellow citizens every goddamn day. And the country we would be if we tore down those walls, if we relinquished that call for order, if we focused instead on things like safety, right? A different thing. Safety, treatment, trauma, care, empathy, education. We would all be better off.